What if that iconic moment of respect between Thanos and Tony Stark on Titan wasn't really about admiration? Think about it. Thanos, the Mad Titan, giving a nod to a hero? Or was it something far deeper, something rooted in a chilling, universe-shattering fear? Could it be that Thanos wasn't just after the Infinity Stones? What if he was trying to stop a prophecy, a future where Tony Stark doesn't just save the world, but maybe even conquers it, reborn as the infamous Doctor Doom? Are we looking at their dynamic all wrong? Let's peel back a layer of the MCU that might change how you see everything. We all remember the scene, right? Titan, a ruined world. Iron Man, battered and bruised, standing defiantly against Thanos, who's just wiped the floor with Hulks, sorcerers, and gods. And then Thanos drops those unforgettable lines, "You have my respect, Stark." Followed by, "When I'm done, half of humanity will still be alive. I hope they remember you." At first glance, it looks like a warrior acknowledging a worthy opponent. A rare moment of something like empathy from a guy bent on cosmic genocide. We've picked it apart, analyzed it, and mostly chalked it up to Tony Stark's incredible guts, his sheer human audacity against insane cosmic power. But what if that's just scratching the surface? What if there's a deeper, more unsettling truth hiding there? Could Thanos' look at Stark have been loaded with something heavier than just props for bravery? This is Thanos we're talking about, a super strategist who plotted to get the Infinity Stones for years, maybe decades. He's not one for casual compliments. Every word, every action usually has a purpose serving his grand, awful plan. His whole mission is built on a brutal, necessary calculus, or so he thinks. So for him to single out Stark like that, right when he's about to win it all, feels off. More than off. It feels like a blip in the system. Why Stark? Why this human? Out of all the powerhouses he'd faced and beaten. The theory we're diving into today suggests something chilling. That Thanos' respect was a carefully chosen word, hiding a deep understanding, maybe even a fear, of Tony Stark's terrifying ultimate potential. Not just the potential to be a hero, but to become something far more complex, far more powerful, and maybe even more dangerous than Thanos himself, just in a different way. What if Thanos looked at Iron Man and saw the shadow of Doctor Doom? This idea changes everything about their showdown, and frankly, about Tony Stark's whole journey. Let's rewind a bit to another key line on Titan, right before the respect moment. Thanos, sounding almost philosophical, tells Stark, "You're not the only one cursed with knowledge." Again, the usual take is pretty straightforward. Both Thanos and Stark are visionaries, in their own twisted or heroic ways. Thanos thinks he knows the grim truth about saving the universe. Stark, haunted by those visions from Age of Ultron, driven by his smarts and the weight of the world, is always trying to protect Earth, to stay one step ahead. He's seen what could happen, and that knowledge is a constant torment. So on the surface, Thanos is saying, yeah, I get it. Knowing too much sucks. But what if cursed with knowledge had a hidden layer, something way more specific to what Thanos theoretically knew about Stark's future? If our main idea holds up, that Thanos knew about a timeline or a multiversal constant where Tony Stark becomes a Doctor Doom type figure, then this knowledge gets a whole new meaning. It's not just about their current problems. It's the curse of knowing Stark's horrifying potential. Thanos' knowledge wouldn't just be about balancing the universe, it would be about understanding the terrifying capabilities and the potential tyrannical path of the man right in front of him. Imagine that. Thanos sees Stark not just as a roadblock to his plan, but as a potential future rival, or even a successor in the cosmic power game, just with a different, maybe sneakier ideology. This angle suggests Thanos saw in Stark a reflection of the same kind of universe-altering intellect and ambition that, in another package, Victor Von Doom in the comics, creates one of Marvel's scariest figures. The curse for Stark, then, isn't just his current anxieties. It's the unwritten prophecy of his own potential transformation. a destiny that Thanos might have glimpsed through some cosmic insight. Now, obviously this is a big leap. There's no MCU scene explicitly saying Thanos' words meant this. But hey, in the world of theories, it's these little ambiguities that let us dig deeper. If Thanos did see this doom potential in Stark, his line changes from a shared philosophical moment to a veiled, almost ominous nod to a future only he, at that moment, truly got. It paints Thanos not just as a fanatic, but as a being weighed down by multiple layers of awful knowledge, including the budding doom he thought he was facing. So, for this idea of Thanos seeing a future Doctor Doom in Tony Stark to even get off the ground, we need to ask, does Tony Stark actually have the raw materials, the seeds, that could grow into such a figure? And honestly, the parallels between Tony Stark and Victor Von Doom from the comics are pretty striking. They're often like two sides of the same brilliant, tragically flawed coin. Both are geniuses, arguably some of the smartest people on their worlds. Both have massive egos, a belief in their own rightness that sometimes looks like a god complex. And both have been through serious trauma. For Doom, it was the accident that scarred his face and, you could argue, his mind, fueling his quest for power and revenge. For Tony, it was the shrapnel near his heart, the horrors of war he saw and helped create, and the constant threat of everything ending. These common threads, genius, ego, trauma, are a powerful mix driving both characters. Look at Tony's journey in the MCU. His I am Iron Man declaration? Huge ego. But also him taking responsibility. His desire to build a suit of armor around the world, which led to Ultron. That came from a genuine, if misguided, wish to protect everyone. This isn't a million miles away from Doom's reasoning in the comics. Often, his tyrannical moves are in his head for the greater good of Latveria or even the world because he thinks only he is smart enough and strong enough to bring order. Stark's willingness to make tough calls, to bend the rules, to be the guy who makes the sacrifice play. These are all signs of a mind that, under different pressures or with a shifted moral compass, could easily go dark. Think about the Sokovia Accords. Stark, shaken by Ultron, sides with government oversight. He believes superpowered folks need checks and balances. While his intentions might be good, preventing more disasters, it's also a move towards control, a belief that he knows best how to manage power. That's not so different from Doom's absolute rule over Latveria, where he controls everything, convinced it's for his people's own good. And in the comics, Dr. Doom isn't just a tech whiz, he's also a powerful sorcerer, almost on par with Doctor Strange. MCU Tony never got into magic, but with his level of genius, if he'd been exposed to it or pushed towards it, it's not crazy to think he could have mastered it. He figured out time travel in a weekend, after all. The Demon in a Bottle. Comic storyline, while about alcoholism, shows Stark's capacity for self-destruction and his battles with his own demons. If those struggles had gone a different way, if he hadn't made his ultimate sacrifice, they could have paved the way for a darker, more cynical, power-hungry persona. The raw ingredients for a Doom-like figure, the smarts, the ambition, the trauma, and the willingness to make universe-shaking decisions were always there in Tony Stark. It's not about saying he was Doom, but that the potential, the echo, was definitely there. The whole multiverse saga kicking off in the MCU really changes how we can look at characters and their destinies. If there are infinite universes, then there are infinite versions of our favorite heroes and villains. The idea of variance, different versions of the same person shaped by different choices or situations, isn't just a cool plot point, it's a basic truth of this new cosmic setup. And this is where the Stark becoming Doom theory gets another boost, not necessarily as something that had to happen in our main MCU timeline, but as a very real possibility in another one. In Marvel Comics, the idea of Stark and Doom being linked, or even being variants of each other, has popped up. For instance, in What If? Iron Man, Demon. In an Armor Number 1, a story from Earth 11029, Tony Stark and Victor Von Doom basically swap minds. Now, that's not Tony choosing to become Doom, but it shows that their lives and identities can get tangled up in pretty extreme ways. The multiverse opens the door to realities where the things that made Tony Stark into Iron Man could have, with just a few key differences, sent him down a path very similar to Victor Von Doom's. Picture a Tony Stark who never had Pepper, Rhodey, or Happy. A Tony Stark whose trauma cut even deeper, who was totally isolated. Or a Tony Stark who, trying to protect the world, made one too many compromises, crossed one too many moral lines until he became someone else entirely, driven only by a cold, hard, intellectual need for control, thinking it was the only way to save everyone. Now let's think about Thanos. His main interaction with the Time Stone in Infinity War was about using it right then and there. But who's to say what a being of his cosmic standing, with eons of existence and huge resources, might have already figured out about reality and its infinite variations? Even before he got the Time Stone, Thanos was a big deal cosmically. It's not impossible that through old prophecies, run-ins with other cosmic beings, or powerful artifacts, he could have learned about certain multiversal constants, or very likely variant destinies for key individuals. If Tony Stark is a Nexus being in some realities, or if his potential to become a Doom-like figure is a recurring theme across parts of the multiverse, Thanos might have known this. His curse of knowledge could go beyond just understanding the main timeline. He might have seen glimpses, echoes, or direct visions of a Stark who fully embraced the darker side of his genius, becoming a technological sorcerer king. This wouldn't mean he knew the exact future of our MCU, Tony Stark, but rather the terrifying potential that Stark, as an archetype, represented across the multiverse. That potential alone could be enough to make Stark stand out, to mark him as someone needing special attention, a threat to be understood and, if needed, dealt with decisively. The multiverse makes the Stark as Doom idea less about a straight transformation and more about a shadowy reflection, a dark possibility that Thanos might have been uniquely able to see. Okay, so if we roll with the idea that Thanos had this scary foresight, this knowledge of Tony Stark's hidden Doom potential, what would he do with it? A guy as calculating and proactive as Thanos wouldn't just sit on that kind of info. This brings us to the secretly watched him part of our theory. It suggests that Thanos, long before he showed up on Earth in Infinity War, was actively keeping an eye on Tony Stark, studying his progress, his inventions, his psychological changes. This wasn't just normal recon on a guy defending an Infinity Stone. This was specific, focused observation of someone he saw as a unique, long-term threat. How could Thanos, all the way out in space, effectively watch a human on Earth? Well, he had massive resources. He had armies, advanced alien tech, and agents like the Black Order and at first Gamora who could gather intel across the galaxy. It's believable that he had spies, maybe even sleeper agents or subtle tech probes, keeping tabs on Earth's biggest tech brain. Think about the huge leaps in Stark's technology, from the clunky Mark III to the nanotech suits. Those kinds of advancements would definitely show up on a cosmic scale, catching the eye of anyone looking for potential threats or power players. Thanos might have been especially interested in Stark's experiments with artificial intelligence, like Jarvis, and more disastrously, Ultron. The creation of Ultron, a global threat born from Stark's desire to protect, could have been a massive red flag for Thanos, confirming his fears about Stark's ability to unleash devastating power, even with good intentions. A classic trait of many would-be saviors who turn into tyrants. Plus, Thanos is a cosmic being. His awareness might not just be limited to tech surveillance. Could he sense disturbances in the cosmic energies, so to speak? Could he perceive the ripples of Stark's genius, his ambition, his near-fatal dance with hubris across the cosmic web? That's more speculative, sure. but not totally out there for a character like Thanos in the Marvel Universe. The Chitauri invasion, orchestrated by Thanos, gave him a direct, though failed, test of Earth's defenses and, by extension, of Tony Stark. Loki's scepter holding the Mind Stone was on Earth for a good while. Could its presence have acted as a kind of beacon, letting Thanos indirectly size up the planet's key players, including the man who would eventually help unlock its secrets? There are no scenes of Thanos with a telescope aimed at Stark Tower, obviously. This watching would likely have been much more subtle, a long-game strategy. Maybe some of those near-Earth encounters or unexplained cosmic weirdness hinted at in the background of MCU films were actually Thanos' forces on recon missions. The goal wouldn't necessarily be to jump in early, but to understand, to know your enemy, or in this case, to know the man who could become an even bigger threat than you first thought. If Thanos saw the seeds of Dr. Doom in Tony Stark, then every new invention, every public display of ego, every time Stark pushed the limits of science and ethics would have been another piece of data, another bit of evidence confirming his chilling foresight. The idea of a silent cosmic observer tracking Stark's every significant move adds a layer of paranoia and predestination to Stark's journey, suggesting his path was being watched by forces far beyond his understanding long before he even heard the name Thanos. With this theory in mind, that Thanos knew about Stark's potential to become a Doom-like figure and had been watching him, the whole fight on Titan looks different. It's not just a battle for the Time Stone anymore. It becomes this deeply personal, almost philosophical showdown between two beings who get the weight of immense power and the burden of knowledge. But it's also between a would-be god and the man he fears might become another one. Every move Thanos makes against Stark, every word he says can be seen in this new light. When Thanos first identifies him, Stark, it's not just recognizing a known enemy. If he's been watching him, it's the acknowledgement of someone he's been interested in for a long time, maybe even with a twisted kind of anticipation. The sheer brutality Thanos uses against Stark, pushing him to his absolute limits, could be seen as a test. Is this the Stark who will break and fall, or the Stark who will rise, maybe showing the very resilience and ruthlessness that define Doom? Thanos throws a moon at him, for goodness sake. This isn't just about beating an enemy. It feels like he's trying to see just how far Stark can go, how strong his will to survive really is. Think about Thanos' line, all that for a drop of blood. On the surface, it's a taunt, showing how insignificant Stark is against his power. But if Thanos sees the budding Doom in Stark, it could also be a nod to that incredible will, that even against impossible odds, Stark still managed to make him bleed. A being who by then had 4 Infinity Stones. It's a testament to the very potential Thanos fears. The fight is a trial by fire, and Thanos might be looking to see what comes out. Will it be just Iron Man, the hero? Or will the extreme pressure forge something harder, something more like the iron will and terrifying intellect of Victor Von Doom? And then, the respect. If Thanos fears Stark's potential to become a multiversal tyrant, why spare him when Doctor Strange offers the Time Stone? This is maybe the trickiest part of the theory. A few ideas pop up. Perhaps, in that moment, Thanos saw Stark choose heroism, choose sacrifice, over saving himself in a way that a fully formed Doom might not. Maybe sparing Stark was part of a bigger plan, a gamble that Stark, having faced this ultimate test, might be steered away from that darker path. Or, more cynically, maybe Thanos knew that letting Stark live, letting him experience the snap, making him suffer that huge loss would be a key step towards that potential darkness. A trauma that could eventually fuel the very transformation Thanos foresaw. Maybe Thanos believed that only by pushing Stark to the edge, by showing him how useless his current heroism was against true cosmic power, could he begin to understand the kind of power he would need to become Doom. The line, "I hope they remember you," also gets a more poignant, almost tragic feel. Is Thanos hoping they remember Tony Stark, the hero, before he potentially becomes something else entirely? Or is it just a straightforward acknowledgement of a worthy opponent, a final salute before the end? The cool thing about this theory is that it doesn't necessarily cancel out the existing interpretations, but adds layers of complexity. The battle on Titan becomes less about a simple fight for stones and more about a loaded psychological chess match, with Thanos not just trying to win the war, but maybe trying to understand or even manipulate the future of a man he saw as uniquely dangerous. Now, to add a really interesting, if totally speculative, meta layer to all of this, those persistent rumors and fan castings about Robert Downey Jr. and Dr. Doom. For years, some fans have been super keen to see RDJ, after defining Tony Stark for over a decade, take on one of Marvel's most iconic villains, Victor Von Doom. Lately, as of mid-2025, these whispers have sometimes ramped up into claims of official announcements, suggesting RDJ is set to return to the MCU, not as a Stark variant, but as Dr. Doom himself, maybe in a future Avengers movie, with some rumors even throwing around titles like Avengers Doomsday and the Russo brothers returning. Let's be crystal clear here. As of right now, these reports of Robert Downey Jr. being officially cast as Dr. Doom are still unconfirmed rumors. Marvel Studios is famously secretive, and big casting news like that would usually come with a lot of official noise. Without that, this is all just speculation and wishful thinking from fans. However, if something like that were to happen, it would be huge for the MCU and would shine an interesting light back on theories like the one we're discussing. The thematic parallels between Stark and Doom, their genius, their ego, their ability to change the world would get an incredibly powerful meta-narrative. The actor who played the MCU's greatest hero turning into its potential next great villain. That would be a serious storytelling move. It would create an instant, almost gut-level connection for the audience, highlighting how thin the line between these two characters is in a way few other casting choices could. But it's important to be clear about what this would mean. If RDJ played Victor Von Doom, it would most likely be the classic Victor Von Doom from Latveria, a completely separate character from Tony Stark. It would not automatically mean that Tony Stark became Dr. Doom in the main MCU timeline, nor would it confirm that Thanos foresaw that specific actor playing that specific villain. What it would do is highlight the archetypal similarities between the two characters. It would be a nod to their comic book rivalry and their often mirrored journeys. It would almost be like the universe itself recognized the deep similarities, casting the same face for two of its most impactful minds. From the perspective of our theory that Thanos feared Stark's potential to become a Doom-like figure, such a casting would be a wonderfully ironic echo. It wouldn't prove the theory as in-universe canon that Thanos knew this specific outcome, but it would certainly make the thematic exploration richer. It would feel like a cosmic joke or a profound statement on genius and power playing out on the MCU's grand stage. For now, though, we have to treat these rumors carefully. The theory of Thanos' foresight relies on its own interpretation of existing MCU content and comic book parallels, not on unconfirmed casting news. Still, the fact that this fan desire even exists says a lot about how closely these two characters are linked in the minds of Marvel fans. Okay, while the idea of Thanos foreseeing Tony Stark becoming Dr. Doom and secretly watching him is definitely compelling and adds some thrilling new layers to the Infinity Saga, we've got to stay grounded in what's actually established in the MCU and look at the counter-arguments. Right now, this whole thing is firmly in fan theory territory. There's no explicit statement, scene, or shred of evidence in any MCU film or official material that directly says Thanos knew Stark was destined to become Dr. Doom, or that he was monitoring him specifically for this reason. The generally accepted canonical reason for Thanos' respect for Stark comes from Stark's resilience, his smarts, and his willingness to fight to the bitter end, even though he was just a mortal against a cosmic titan. Stark, with no inherent superpowers, consistently punched way above his weight, challenging gods and monsters through sheer ingenuity and willpower. In Thanos' eyes, he was the one who best represented Earth's surprising defiance. The line, "You're not the only one cursed with knowledge," is, by most direct interpretations, about their shared burden of foresight and the heavy responsibilities they both felt. Thanos in his misguided quest to save the universe, and Stark in his relentless efforts to protect Earth, often having seen glimpses of threats before anyone else. Plus, Thanos' main goal throughout Infinity War and Endgame is consistently shown as getting the Infinity Stones to balance the universe. He focused on Earth because several stones were there, and the Avengers, including Iron Man, were the main obstacles. While he recognized Stark as a significant threat among them, there's no direct proof in the films to suggest his interest was because of a prophecy about Stark becoming a different villain. The idea that Thanos used the Time Stone or Soul Stone to foresee Tony Stark becoming Dr. Doom also isn't backed up by how the MCU shows those stones working or how Thanos used them. He gets the Time Stone during Infinity War on Titan from Doctor Strange after his fight with Stark. There's no sign he used it for detailed future gazing about Stark's alternate character paths before their fight. The Soul Stone's powers in the MCU are a bit vague but haven't been shown to grant such specific visions of alternate identities. The comic book connections like Earth 11029, where Stark and Doom swap minds, are cool, but they're explicitly what if scenarios or alternate reality stories. They show thematic links and possibilities, but don't count as direct evidence for what the main MCU Thanos knew or why he did things. Similarly, the thematic parallels between Stark and Doom, their intellect, ambition, and trauma are undeniable and make for great character study. However, thematic parallels don't equal narrative cause and effect within the MCU itself. They highlight why the idea of Stark becoming Doom clicks with us, but not that Thanos knew it would happen. So it's important to present this theory as exactly that, a theory. It's a creative rereading of existing events, a what-if that deepens our appreciation of the characters, but it's not, as of now, a confirmed part of the MCU story. It's a lens to view the story through, not necessarily the story the filmmakers explicitly told about Thanos' specific insight into a Doom future for Stark. The established canon gives simpler, more direct explanations for Thanos' actions and words about Tony Stark. So, if the canonical evidence is thin and needs a lot of reinterpretation, why is this theory of Thanos fearing Tony Stark's potential transformation into Dr. Doom so darn appealing to so many fans? Why does it keep sparking discussions, debates, and endless speculation? The answer, I think, is because of the incredible thematic richness it brings to both Stark and Thanos, and really to the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe. At its heart, this theory taps into one of the most compelling ideas in storytelling, the fine line between hero and villain, the idea that our greatest strengths, if twisted or pushed too far, can become our scariest weaknesses. Tony Stark, the brilliant, altruistic, self-sacrificing hero, also had a massive ego, a tendency to go it alone, and a deep-seated fear that drove him to create potentially world-ending tech like Ultron. Dr. Doom, in many comic versions, isn't just some cackling one-note baddie. He's incredibly smart, often driven by a warped sense of order and a belief that only he can save humanity or his nation of Latveria, even if it means being a tyrant. The parallels are just too strong to ignore, and the theory gives voice to that underlying tension in Stark's character, the constant battle with his own potential for hubris and control. By suggesting Thanos recognized this Doom potential, the theory lifts the Mad Titan beyond just being a cosmic bad guy. It paints him as a being with a deeper, almost tragic understanding of the universe's cycles of power and corruption. His respect for Stark becomes less about admiring a fighter and more about a chilling recognition of a kindred spirit in terms of universe-altering potential, even if that spirit could take an even darker path. It adds a layer of intellectual horror to their fight. Thanos isn't just fighting a guy in a metal suit, he's potentially staring into a mirror of future tyranny, a different kind of apocalypse he might also feel he needs to prevent, or at least acknowledge. What's more, the theory retroactively makes Stark's entire MCU journey even richer. Every decision, every sacrifice, every brush with his own darker side gets new weight if you look at it through the lens of a potential prophesied fall from grace. His ultimate sacrifice in Endgame becomes even more moving. Not just a hero saving the universe, but a man consciously choosing to defy a potentially darker destiny. A man who, in his final moments, completely rejects the path of power and control that a Doom-like figure might grab. It cements his heroism by showing him winning against not just an external enemy, but also the theoretical shadow of his own immense potential for darkness. The theory also clicks because it embraces the what-if spirit that's so key to comic book storytelling and now, increasingly, to the MCU with its multiverse. It invites us to look past the obvious, to find hidden meanings, to connect dots, and to imagine the infinite possibilities just outside the official story. It turns watching into active participation, making us co-creators of meaning in this huge fictional universe. It's a testament to how deep these characters are that they can support such complex and far-reaching speculation. The echo of Doom within Tony Stark and Thanos' potential awareness of it might not be canon, but it's a powerful idea that makes the story bigger, deeper, and endlessly more fascinating. It reminds us that even in a universe of gods and monsters, the most compelling struggles are often the ones fought in the hearts and minds of its most brilliant and most flawed individuals. This is a pretty wild one, a theory that totally reframes one of the MCU's most important relationships. But what do you all think? Is there more to Thanos' respect than just what we see on screen? Did the Mad Titan really see the shadow of Dr. Doom hanging over Tony Stark's future? Was he secretly keeping tabs on Earth's greatest genius, not just for the stones, but for the man himself? I want to hear all your thoughts, your counter theories, any clues you think we might have missed. Drop them in the comments below. Let's really get into this. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the chilling possibilities of the MCU, if you love exploring these kinds of intricate theories, then do me a solid, hit that like button. It really helps the channel out. Make sure you're subscribed and ring that notification bell because we've got a lot more Marvel mysteries, character breakdowns, and what if scenarios heading your way and you won't want to miss a single one.